So this is the part where I want to talk about the whole mindset recalibration. This is the part that I had to figure out and go in and hack my emotional loop. We all have what we call a default emotional loop. And if you allow yourself to just fall into that default loop, you're going to be living your life based on the stuff that happens around you externally. So essentially, you're saying, I'm going to relinquish all control over how I feel for the rest of my life based on what happens to me. That's a victim mindset. What you got to do is reverse that, take control over your mindset so that you can now affect your outcome, as opposed to you letting your current outcomes affect you emotionally, and then you just get into this repeated cycle of negativity. I call this a science of happiness. Here's how most people think happiness works or doesn't work. So they experience an event. Event happens, and your brain processes that event and says, this event was pleasurable. And then if your brain says, okay, that was pleasurable, then you're happy, right? You buy a new car, it gives you some short-term pleasure, you're happy in the moment. If an event happens that was not pleasurable, that inflicted pain on you, your brain says, okay, well, that's not pleasurable, that's pain. And so the pain means that I'm supposed to be unhappy, right? And that's a simplistic way to look at it. That is not what happens. It's really interesting when you start to learn about your neurological system and the way your brain processes experiences and the way that you end up feeling about those experiences and what you end up doing about it. When you understand the science of emotions, right, what makes us feel a certain way, man, this absolutely liberated me, because I realize now how much control I have over how I feel on a day-to-day basis, on an hour-to-hour basis, on a minute-to-minute basis. So what happens typically is we have an experience and we immediately attach a meaning to that experience. So let's say, again, an agent leaves you, right? You go back and your brain says, okay, this is an experience. I'm going to search for a past experience that seems similar to this one because I got to put it into context. So your brain says, well, an agent just left. I remember the last time an agent left, and man, that really pissed me off, or that really hurt my feelings, or I just felt so betrayed. And if the meaning you attach to it is, oh, geez, if everyone keeps leaving, I'm not going to grow. I add a new agent, I lose an agent. I add a new agent, I lose a new agent. Geez, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, for every agent I add, if I lose an agent every time I add one, I'm never going to grow. Oh my God, I'm never going to grow. I'm never going to be successful. And if your brain attaches that meaning to that experience, man, there's no way you're going to succeed. You're living with a mindset of loss, of scarcity. So you experience something, your brain attaches the meaning to it. Let's say the meaning it attaches to that experience is fear of pain, right? Which is essentially worry, stress, anxiety, angst about the future, etc. That fear of pain goes into a part of your brain called the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus processes the fear and says, okay, I'm going to create a hormonal response and secrete this hormone into the body that's going to physiologically affect essentially how we physically feel. And the hormone that excretes is epinephrine, otherwise known as adrenaline. So your adrenal glands get the signal from the hypothalamus part of your brain. Your adrenal gland says, okay, we're going to produce some epinephrine. Now, this is not necessarily a bad thing. This is something that we were born with. Going back when we're running around getting chased by saber-toothed tigers, etc. If you see a saber-toothed tiger chasing you, ready to eat you, fear is a good emotional response. Your hypothalamus says, I'm going to produce epinephrine, give you a jolt of energy, going to increase your heart rate. It's going to make you either fight or flee, right? You've heard of this whole fight or flight experience. That's essentially what epinephrine does. And so you go into the state of panic, and panic is good if you have a saber-toothed tiger chasing you that might eat you. It does not work so well when you have fear of pain in business, right? So good if you're getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger, bad if you just had an agent leave you and you're trying to rebuild your agency. Now, if you have an experience and you attach pleasure to that experience, that also goes to the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus is going to produce dopamine. Dopamine is like a close cousin to epinephrine. Dopamine makes you feel good. So when you get like a like on social media, or you buy a new pair of shoes, or you buy a new car, or whatever, the reason you feel happy, it's not just, oh, I bought a car, I feel happy. No, you attach meaning to buying that car. The meaning you attach to buying that car is, oh, now that means I'm successful. That means more people are going to think I'm cool. Whatever it is, your hypothalamus then says, this is defined as pleasure. I'm going to produce dopamine, and now dopamine gives us short-term happiness. The problem with dopamine is it's addictive. And like everything addictive, like a drug, you get to a point where you can't get high anymore. So what happened to me was I'd buy one car, and then I'd buy a cooler car, and then a cooler car, and then a cooler car. And then all of a sudden, you get to the point where you can't get excited about a Ferrari anymore. You see how, that's a sickness. So every time your mindset is conditioned to, I got to buy the next thing. I got to hit the next monetary goal. Oh, wait till I go on this trip. Wait till I hit this income level. Whatever that is, when you hit that income level or you hit that goal or whatever it is, yeah, it's going to make you happy for a short period of time. And then you're not happy anymore. You're miserable again. And the only way you're going to get happy is to outdo what you did before. You're a hamster on the wheel. That's why dopamine, you can turn into a dopamine fiend. You're like a drug addict if that's what you're chasing. Now, the third meaning you could attach to an event is gratitude, right? Similar to pleasure, but different. Gratitude, when the hypothalamus feels like you're grateful for the moment, you appreciate the moment, the hypothalamus produces something called oxytocin. Again, oxytocin is a cousin of dopamine. When your body produces oxytocin, something very interesting happens. And there was a scientist that won a Nobel Prize of medicine about his discovery. And what he found was when your body produces oxytocin, it signals something called endothelium-derived relaxing factor. When your body produces endothelium-derived relaxing factor, what ends up happening is the smooth muscle tissue in your body relaxes and your blood vessels dilate. Now, what ends up happening is your heart, the cardiac muscles in your heart are one of these smooth muscles that has this effect. When you feel grateful towards something, your heart becomes engorged with blood. Your blood vessels dilate, your heart becomes engorged with blood, and you literally get a heart on. Ironically, the science that was found with endothelium-derived relaxing factor is the science that Viagra was based on. So your heart now is engorged with blood. What ends up happening is you aren't just having feelings of joy. You have a biochemical reaction and a physiological reaction to this oxytocin signaling this endothelium-derived relaxing factor. So if you've ever heard someone say, oh, I feel so full, my heart feels so full right now, that's not just like a saying. That is a literal, a physical description of what's happening to your body. Your heart is full of blood. You feel fulfilled. When you feel fulfilled, you want for nothing, because how could you possibly want anything when you're already full? You're not chasing anything because you have everything you need inside. Now you say, well, geez, doesn't that kill motivation? That's what I used to think. I used to think motivation was fueled by lack, right? I'm lacking in an area. It pisses me off. It's going to fire me up. It's going to make me go out there and work harder. And I'm going to fulfill that void in my heart. And then I make that money and I buy that thing. And now I feel fulfilled for like a day or two or maybe a couple of weeks. And then I'm pissed off that I don't have the next best thing. And I'm back on the hamster on the wheel all over again. In the process of being unfulfilled and unhappy with your current situation, you start feeling desperate because you don't have what you want. So you're pushing the sale too hard. You're begging for the sale. You don't stand up for yourself. You go out there and you're desperate. And just like the dating world, and the ladies on the call can back me up on this, There is nothing more unattractive to a woman than a desperate man. They can just sense the neediness, the thirstiness. Now, what do you think happens in the sales process? Or what do you think happens in the recruiting process? If you're a thirsty, desperate recruiter, or you're in front of a prospect and you're thirsty and desperate to make the sale, they can tell. But if you're fulfilled inside, if you don't need the sale, if you don't need the recruit because you already know what your destiny is, if you don't need them to fulfill a void inside of you because you're already full, you already know who you are, what do you think happens? It's the same thing I remember when I was single, man. Every time I was single and I'd go to bars or whatever, parties with my friends and stuff, man, it's like it's this major master plan to try to get a girl to talk to you. But when I had a girlfriend, man, the girls came out of the woodwork without even trying. Why is that? It's because the guy that's already had a girlfriend is not needy and thirsty and desperate. They don't care. And when someone is fulfilled inside and they're not out there searching, hunting for, begging for a business, but they go out there and execute the service for the client's benefit with no emotional attachment to the outcome for your own personal benefit, everything starts to flow. And now you have feelings of joy inside because you know you don't need to make the sale. Now here's the grand irony of this process. All of a sudden, everyone you go see wants to buy from you because they can sense that the only reason you're out there is because you have joy in your heart and you're doing this because you really believe in the service you're providing, not so you can go out and buy the next hot car or the next handbag or the next pair of shoes or whatever it is. And so that's what's going to give you that long-term mindset that you need to succeed. And again, you're going to attract the right people into your organization. So your emotional loop, your default emotional loop that we all fall victim to is we experience an outcome. Well, we don't like that outcome. That outcome sucks. And so that's the meaning we attach to it, right? Oh, another agent betrayed me. Oh, that must mean that I'm not a good enough leader. Or that must mean that the humankind is just terrible and all these millennials are evil and you can't recruit millennials anymore. It doesn't work anymore. Or American culture is such that everyone feels entitled. And so how are you going to get someone to work on straight commission when they feel entitled to a base salary and benefits? Oh my God, my business isn't going to take off. All right. You attach that meaning to that outcome. What's going to happen is you're going to have that biochemical response, right? You're going to feel that fear. The hypothalamus is going to produce that epinephrine, and then you go into fight or flight, and then you get desperate and you panic. That's what creates that panicking emotion. You can't even help how you feel. Your body is telling you how to feel. You got no control over it. So now you're desperate and you start having thoughts. Oh no, this is never going to work. I'm never going to be successful. This whole business model is flawed. We can't recruit anymore. Oh, COVID-19 happened. Oh, no one's going to buy over the phone. Well, how am I going to recruit when I can't get face-to-face with people, right? Those are the thoughts that go through your head. And then so you take action, which is usually non-action. You do nothing, because no one's going to buy and no one's going to be starting a new career in the middle of COVID-19. And what happens? You have a crappy outcome. Nobody buys because you didn't even try to sell them because you didn't even try. And then no one's going to come and work with you at your agency because you already have this mindset of, oh, it's not even worth recruiting. So what happens? Now you get put into a mood. Oh, I'm in a bad mood. How's it going? Oh, man, I'm just in a crappy mood. Why are you in a bad mood? Oh, I made all these calls to these new recruits I found on Career Builder or whatever, and no one returned my calls. So how many calls did you make? Well, I made 3, and I couldn't get a hold of anybody. Oh, God. So now your leader is in a bad mood. Well, what happens if you stay in a bad mood for too long? I'm in a bad mood for minutes at a time, sometimes hours at a time. But man, if you're in a bad mood for more than a day, you wake up the next morning in a bad mood. Actually, you wake up in the morning with a neutral mood, and your neutral mood searches for, what mood am I supposed to be in? Well, I'm quarantined and I can't recruit. And yesterday I made 3 whopping calls and I couldn't get a hold of anyone. I'm in a bad mood. Boom! Instantaneously, you're in a bad mood. You're in a bad mood for the morning, and then extends to the afternoon. And you go to bed, you're still in a bad mood. You wake up the next morning, same cycle happens. When you're in a bad mood for more than a few days, and by the way, the length of time that you're in this mood for is called the refractory period. The longer the refractory period lasts, the more that mood transforms from just being a mood to literally being a temperament. So if you ever met anybody, oh, this guy's a bad temper. What's his temperament like? Well, he's pretty chill. What's his temperament like? He's just always negative. He's Mr. Negative Nathan, whatever it is. He's got a bad temperament. Well, what happens if you develop a bad temperament, and that refractory period lasts for more than a few months or even a year? You have now created a permanent disposition. So when you meet someone and you say, geez, this person's disposition is just an ugly personality, right? They're just, I don't like them. The reason they got to have a bad, unattractive, repelling personality or a negative disposition is because if you go all the way back, usually to their childhood, an outcome, an event happened that put them in a mood. They stayed in that mood for too long, so they developed a certain temperament, and that temperament turned into the disposition, and that is essentially their personality. Now, this is scary because you don't have any control once your body produces that biochemical reaction. You're cooked in the squat. So how do we hack this? This is how we hack it, okay? If something happens in the present and you are grateful for it, all right? We're going to change the context of the event. Agent leaves you. You're going to attach meaning to it. If you attach the negative meaning we already discussed, you're done. Right? Your body is going to produce the epinephrine, and then you're screwed. But if you say, okay, why did that person leave? What does that mean? Let me tell you something. My current business partner is an amazing human being. And I have gone through several crappy business partners that did not embody the same ethics, the moral compass, the work ethic, etc. And man, every time I split with a business partner, it was traumatic, emotionally traumatic. I'd get resentful, angry. But what I realize now is, man, if those knuckleheads were still around, I wouldn't have my current business partner. So I've changed the meaning. Those other business partners had to leave to open up the space for my new current business partner to enter to fill that space, right? So if you had a baseball team and your shortstop left, you'd be all upset, just like your star agent left, right? But what if right after that star shortstop left you, Derek Jeter shows up on your doorstep, and now you insert Derek Jeter in your starting lineup? You would be grateful that that ex-shortstop left, because that's the only way you got Jeter. So you would be grateful. Now you change the context of the event into one of gratitude. The present happened because of what happened in the past. The past so-called negative experience is responsible for your present situation that you are now grateful for. You've now changed the meaning. So you have a complete recontextualization of your past. You don't have the attachment and the association to your past that you used to. You have a new association, which creates a new neurological response. So now everything that happened in the past is a blessing that you're also grateful for. So you're grateful for the past, you're grateful for the present. Your hypothalamus then receives that feeling of gratitude, produces the oxytocin, which triggers the endothelium-derived relaxing factor, and now you've got joy and certainty. Emphasis on certainty. If you have joy in your heart, it's because you know that everything that happened in the past, as painful as some of those things may have been, all worked to your benefit. These were all blessings. These opened up opportunities that wouldn't have existed had those so-called negative things never happened. Now you're more certain. You're certain that any new so-called negative experience that happens in the present or that might even happen in the future is all working for your benefit. These things aren't happening to you anymore. These things are happening for you. So now every time something so-called negative happens, you're like, awesome. I am so grateful that this so-called crappy experience is happening. I'm so grateful that person betrayed me and left. I'm so grateful I didn't get that client because now I'm not going to get sued by that unethical client that was going to sign that application and turn around and lie about what I said or didn't say, right? I'm grateful that that partner left and betrayed me because now I can open up the door and have Derek Jeter fill that spot instead of the old crappy subpar shortstop. And now if I have that certainty, how do you think that's going to affect your future? You now appreciate the past, what allows you to create the future. And that is where the power is. That's the power that you don't have right now. You may have bits and pieces of that power, as I had bits and pieces of that power, but I didn't have the full power. So every time something so-called negative happens, boom, my default emotional loops starts running and I'm screwed. So here's how I figured out how to hack this emotional loop, right? You gotta hack it early. So I happen to do this through meditation. Okay, I'm not talking about like smoking ayahuasca and like, sweating out in a teepee in the desert. I'm not talking about anything, not that there's anything wrong with that. That's just not me. All I'm talking about is I take some quiet time, I close my eyes, and I just focus on certain things that I'm grateful for. So the experience, it's called metacognition. Metacognition is nothing more than the awareness and understanding of your own thought process. So if I'm feeling a certain way, I say, okay, I'm feeling angry, which happens a lot, by the way. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling resentful towards that person. I just want to. If I found that person on the street, man, I just give it to him. But why? Okay, wait. Okay, so I identify. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling resentful. What's up with that? Why am I feeling that way? Well, because I'm associating that person or that event with something negative. So if I say, okay, well, now at least I'm aware of it. Here's where the hack comes. I'm going to hack the meaning. I'm going to recontextualize that event or that experience. I'm going to put in the context of, okay, this is really illogical that I'm feeling resentful because thank God this person's out of my life, right? No one has ever said, man, I wish that jackass was still on my team. So you gotta be thankful for it. If you're thankful for it, you change the meaning of that person leaving or that thing happening or whatever. Now you got control, right? Nietzsche is or if you guys aren't big philosophers, DMX, if you're a hip hop guy like me, DMX led off one of his songs with this quote. It's actually a Nietzsche quote. It says, "To live is to suffer. To survive is to find meaning in the suffering." So you're gonna suffer. You're gonna have bad crap's gonna happen. You can't avoid it, but you can change the context of what it means. So if you can change the meaning to that negative thing happening, so let's say, again, we'll talk, agent leaves you. If the meaning you attach to that agent leaving is that you now have a bigger opportunity to have a better agent replace their spot, that completely changes how you feel about that event. Or if you had a joint venture set up where you're getting brought into a pool of prospects and then that joint venture thing falls apart, maybe it just means that you got a bigger opportunity with a different group that was going to bring you in to have better prospects. So if now the meaning is, oh, this negative thing happened, well, it's actually not negative because it's going to create a bigger opportunity. Now my body's biochemical response is my body's going to signal that gratitude emotion to my hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is going to create the oxytocin. Oxytocin is going to create the endothelin-derived relaxing factor. And now I'm going to experience joy. I'm going to feel more certain. What happens when you feel more certain? You have more confidence. What happens when you have more confidence? You come up with some really innovative, groundbreaking shit, man. So all of the huge leaps forward I've taken in developing new products, new platforms, new delivery systems, new everything, all came because I had the guts, right? I call it testicular fortitude, right? I had the guts to move forward and try something completely outside of the norm because of this new emotional loop that I've created. Now, when you create that new needle moving stuff, you go into action, man, you're going to execute like a mercenary. You are precision. You're in this power play move that you could have never entered if you didn't have that ultimate certainty and confidence. And what do you think happens when you're executing groundbreaking stuff from a power play position with all this confidence? You change your outcome and you end up dominating. So this is nothing more than a loop, an emotional. All you got to do is hack your default emotional loop and create a new emotional loop. And now everything that happens for you. Nothing happens to you. Things happen for you, for your benefit, for you to create, or I should say fulfill, the destiny that was already from day one set up for you. The table is already set. It's up to you to break out of your hamster on the wheel default emotional loop and create a new one. When you do that, everything in your life is going to change. Your business changes, your business relationships change, your alliances change, the relationships with your family members are going to change, your marriage is going to get better, you're going to be a more effective father or a more effective mother or a big brother or a big sister. Everything works to your benefit. Let's go ahead and open it up. I'm looking at the last fourth question here. We're currently a $6 million a year agency, probably top 7 in the company. How would you take this deal to $20 million in the next 5 years? The leaders in the organization, if you can change your own emotional loop and then teach your people how to change their emotional loop, you become bulletproof. If you can get, and it's not going to, some people aren't going to get it, right? They're just too stubborn. They got too much baggage. They're not willing to make the change. They're not willing to do the work. But the ones that are willing to do the internal work on this, when you have an organization of people that laughs in the face of hardship or laughs in the face of uncertain times because they have ultimate certainty inside, what do you think is going to happen to the way they execute? What do you think is going to happen to your outcome? So anything that could possibly happen to me today or in the future that's so-called negative or challenging, and that just makes me stronger. I'm on Netflix right now, going back and watching all the Star Wars movies with my 10-year-old son. And man, it's got me fired up when Obi-Wan Kenobi's fighting Darth Vader, and Obi-Wan Kenobi says, "You strike me down now, I'll become more powerful than you could ever imagine." And so that's the mindset, right? These guys, these agents that leave you or betray you or steal, or all this negative stuff that happens, man, when they try to strike you down, it may hurt in the moment, but they are making you more powerful than they could possibly imagine, and maybe even more powerful than you could possibly imagine.